Hello, my fellow readers, as I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fan fiction reading. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications for your thoughts of the story and any. Wait, I'm messing it up. Dang it, I did it again. Dang it. Just leave a comment. I'm just gonna ignore this. Ooh. So, the story I am reading is called Psithurism. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I know that's a word, like, legit, I looked it up. I looked up that word because I didn't know if it was a real word before I even thought of, going to read. It turns out to be a real word. Excuse me. It basically describes the sound of rustling leaves. Way to go, author, right from the get-go. You taught me something new. You taught me a word I didn't think would even exist. Yeah. This is Psithurism by Baronetess Bisnia. I don't know if you accidentally spelled Baronetess. I'm pretty sure there's a Baronetess. Baroness, like there's no E right there. I don't know if that's an accidental misspell or you did that on purpose. I don't know. Let's get started. The 1st of March started with an unusually warm weather that was known for the South Carpathians. There was sun, and the winds were a gentle zephyr, causing much of the winter snow to melt in patches here and there. Having longed for the warmth and fresh air, Leon embarked on an outing to spend the day away from the castle with a reluctant Vlad in tow. Why is he called Vlad? Like, why is he called Vlad? Okay. Now, neither being a night creature nor having a preference for staying inside his castle were the reasons for Vlad's hesitation in going along with this. Sunlight was no issue to him, except for the typical drowsiness one experiences with long sun exposure, and he was willing to step out if prompted. It was Lisa. For the past few months, she had been experiencing bouts of nocturnal awakenings and would barely touch most of her meals, leaving her constantly fatigued throughout the day, ever relentless at night. The lack of appetite and insomnia improved by the first winter storm, and with it, her strength returned as well. Seemingly boundless energy, Lisa struggled to let herself rest from time to time, and hungered often for food and something else. A desire Vlad was more than happy to satisfy in bed. Ooh, kinky. He knew this too was only temporary, and another difficult few months were awaiting Lisa. More fatigue, swelling in her limbs, and the pain of it all. Perhaps it was best to loosen up and appreciate the time now, away from the castle and its cold machinery, and towards the shores of the thawing Argus. Lisa's pace quickened as the river came into sight, stopping briefly to find a place to settle for the midday before signaling to Vlad the spot she had chosen. A bank with stretches of emerging grass and backed by forest, ideal to avoid most of the sun's rays. Nodding approvingly, Vlad went ahead to clear away the space from any pebbles and twigs, making it so it was more comfortable for Lisa, who insisted on carrying everything here, wicker basket and all, to relax on the ground. In a display of showmanship, Vlad gracefully skimmed the last found stone across the river and was earned with an unamused look from Lisa as she knelt down to set her things. He joined her in laying out a blanket and packing the food they prepared, taking a seat beside her once it was done. Sat a while after their meal, admiring the alpine scenery and listening to the trickle of the river and gentle sigh of the conifers in the breeze. Vlad broke the silence at the hint of crispness within the air, smiling softly as he spoke. "The pleasant breeze. I haven't experienced spring like this in a long time." His expression took on a somber turn as he acknowledged what was next. However, like every previous spring, it'll come to pass. "But it'll come back again as well," Lisa quietly assured him. "True, but there will come a time when it won't." He lowered his eyes then, unable to face her or their surroundings. Everything will eventually cease to exist. His melancholic thoughts were snapped when Lisa suddenly grabbed a hold of his chin and pulled him forcefully towards her. With a firm tone in her voice, not cease, just change. She loosened her grip on him and smirked before continuing. "Another part of the cycle we're all in." Vlad chuckled deeply, conceding to her viewpoint. You're right. It's a constant metamorphosis of sorts, universe and all. It just feels strange to look from a bigger perspective when I mostly looked at the details for so long. He brought his hands over Lisa's, which were still cupped around his chin, and laced them together. It's something that I wouldn't have thought of if you never came here. I didn't realize how small my views had become in time, or how stagnant my way of life was insane in this vast castle of mine. Lisa was still as he placed her hands on his chest where his non-beating heart laid. Now I'm beginning to understand what it means to live again. I never felt so alive because of that. Blood hung its head low as he fought to maintain composure from the overwhelming emotion flooding through his system. The system has not been easy for me, and when you've given me chances to step out and challenge my beliefs, I resisted you greatly to many of them. His eyes were brimming with tears, clear ones, Lisa noted to herself, when he lifted his head again. Yet your spirit has never wavered, even in enduring hardships, and I thank you for that. His voice cracked. I've done nothing to deserve you, but I'm so grateful you're in my life now. Struck by his vulnerable state, Lisa drew him in a close embrace, letting his head rest over hers while she buried her face within the crook of his neck. And they stayed for a moment like that, Vlad finding tune with her breathing until she turned her head sideways, having found her words. For most of my life, I figured out what my meaning in life was. I had seen so much suffering in others that I wanted to do something about it. Her fingers were tracing the outlines of his scapulae as she went on, and so I resolved to become a doctor, knowing the consequences I could face because of who I am. I left my village to find any sort of medical or scientific knowledge, but it was never enough. And when I was about to give up and return home, I heard a rumor of a man who lived in a large castle full of lost knowledge. She let out a breathy laugh. It was ridiculous to me at the time. I was so desperate that I pursued the rumor and finally found you. Sunlight was slowly creeping over their spot, and Vlad felt his body filled with warmth, knowing it was only a matter of time before he would succumb to lethargy. My purpose was to only learn as much knowledge as I could, and eventually go back to Lupu to help out. But while I was under your tutelage, I realized how lonely I'd been despite growing up in a tight-knit village, and how much we shared in common. Lisa untucked her head from his neck to gaze at the ruggedness of his face. You treated me like an equal and supported me even when you were against it. After all this time together, I learned also that making a difference doesn't have to be so grand for life to be meaningful. She unwrapped her arms from him, bringing them to her lap while beaming joyfully. Sometimes it's simple, like showing kindness to others. Vlad straightened himself as Lisa made a small shake of her hand. I never expected myself to fall in love, marry, and start a family, but I'm here now, with you as my wonderful, loving husband, and our child growing within me. Alright, so Alucard's in the womb right now. He's knocked up. Her hand brushed faintly against her slightly rounded abdomen. Taking a hand from her shoulders, Vlad placed it gently on her stomach and was met with a flutter of kicks, evoking a soft gasp from Lisa. He brightened considerably at the response, counting the kicks to himself until they subsided. You've given me so much, and I thank you in return. Her voice was barely above a whisper. It was getting difficult for him to ignore his growing sluggishness with the sun now directly over the area as he nodded off a bit, keeping one hand still on Lisa, who immediately noticed and guided him to lie down with his head on her lap. You must be tired from the sun. Rest for a bit. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me, she soothed. As she combed through his ebony hair, Vlad reached a hand into his coat and procured an interwoven string of black and white wool threads and tasseled ends, holding up to Lisa. What's this? You're giving me a marshjar. I more or less butchered that. She was about to playfully tease him for giving her a talisman, when they both knew how unfounded its protective properties were, but held her tongue instead. It was a symbol of their union, of light and darkness, of warmth and cold, of life and death, and even of the seasons, all a part of a greater cycle they were in. Come what may, they would always be connected. Lisa grasped the talisman in his hand. Great, thank you. Thank you for everything. She pinned it on her blouse, close to her heart. Sighing happily, Vlad brought his hand back to his chest. His eyes weighed heavy with sleep. Before we know it, we'll have a little one running around to keep us on our feet, she giggled softly. Vlad closed his eyes, drifting off to sleep. Lisa watched him for a few minutes until she could no longer stay awake, shifting herself to be by his side, and in her dreams, she saw a young man with flaxen hair like her own, gazing upwards at a blooming apple tree, an old weather-beaten sturdy talisman hanging with its branches. Okay, so the last two things are basically just Psithurism, Greek for the sound of wind within the trees, like I said earlier, and Marty's Shore, Bohemian for Little March, holidays to mark an official arrival of spring. That's actually pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So here's so what do I think of the story? I think it's actually written pretty dang well. But honestly, that's all this story has. It's written amazingly well. It's a romance drama. Like I can see the romance, but I don't think it's enough to have a drama tag on it. I do like the idea of, I mean, when it comes to Dracula's Vlad, quotation marks, I mean, I kind of like the characters. Like I said, the writing is actually very well done. It's a very eloquent sense of writing, like it's a calligraphy, like very fancy writing, but that's all it is. It's very fancy, but once you get into the details, it's very empty. Let me actually say about this one touch of Drac actually not dying and burning up in the sunlight. That's actually a reference to the original Bram Stoker Dracula. Dracula could actually, just walk around in daylight just fine. He was just very weak from it, and so he was actually able to be killed much easier. That's how Dracula died in the book. They actually called him as daylight was slowly, and he was hiding in the chest. So that way he was hidden in a graveyard during the day. So that way they wouldn't be able to find him. So the main characters, once they found out where he was and daylight happened, and basically they dug up the thing. They had the stake ready. And the moment they opened the casket, Dracula knew he got caught. So he tried to fight back, but they stabbed him in the heart. That's actually true. Dracula can just walk around more or less in daylight. He turned very sluggish, and he can actually be killed much easier. Hence why the story was written as it is. I don't know where the whole photosensitivity thing came from, to be honest. But that seemed to be attached to vampires, including Dracula for some reason, despite the fact Dracula was originally meant to be strong enough that he could actually walk around in daylight for a while, not the entire day. Like I believe there was a point he had to go inside, but he was able to walk around just fine. I find it really weird that you described him as Vlad, because that ain't Vlad. That's Dracula. I know you're referencing the fact that Dracula was based off Vlad the Impaler. I get that. The problem is Dracula is not Vlad. Dracula is based off Vlad. Dracula is Matthias. Like, if you actually follow the actual storyline of Castlevania, he's Matthias Conquerist. I cannot pronounce that last name worth a dang. And he becomes Dracula by having Death kill Walter and taking the Crimson Stone and making the Ebony Stone, so that sort of thing. Probably mixed up the two stones, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this one's kind of a hard one to rate, simply because I don't. What's the phrase? How can you say so much and mean so little? That's pretty much what the story is. It's a lot of very over the top fancy writing, but in the end, it meant jack. It's literally just Lisa and Drac going out for a picnic and then talking for a little bit, and that's it. That's literally it. There's no substance at all. There's nothing to their characters. Even then, like, it's 1,000, like, there's 1,600 words. Not much you can do, right? And, I was expecting some kind of substance, but there's no substance. None of the characters go anywhere. Nothing really happens in the grand scheme of things. Like, even short stories like this, they try to make something in terms of making a comprehensive story, but this, even the whole idea, like, I expected couple briefly reflects on the inevitability of change. That doesn't go anywhere because you try to use big words mean very little things. Um, I give it a 2. Like, maybe if you went on a little longer with them, kind of going more and debating and talking about the seasons and talking about, the expectant of their kid, like what, like the kid, getting more into details on how the kid's gonna change their life specifically, then, or I don't know, touch upon Lisa's backstory a little bit more. I think it would have been better, but I can't rate it. I can't rate it any higher than a 2. And the only reason I give it a 2 is because the writing is actually magnificent. Like I said, how can you mean so much? How can you say so much and mean so little? That's pretty much what the story is. A 2 out of 5. It's boring. It's dull. It's just nothing done. I do like the little nod to the fact Dracula doesn't really burn up in sunlight. I'd like that little tidbit. Other than that, that's it. There's nothing. I mean, wow. Like, if I had to change anything, I'd just extend the conversation a little longer, or make it an actual debate or a bigger discussion, and get rid of the drama. Like, honestly, I would get rid of both genres. Just switch it with like slice of life general sort of thing. That's it. That would have been Dark Symphony 777 and cut.